Do you have a strategy for your existence? Do you have a strategy for your existence? If you don't have a strategy for your existence will be determined by your environment and your history. Your existence will be determined by forces that don't have your personal unique value and dignity in mind. So we all need as human beings an existential strategy, a way to bring our unique abilities, our unique desires, our unique vision of the good into existence. If you don't have this, then no matter how much scientific knowledge you have, no matter how much technological power you have, no matter if you could even somehow live forever, your existence would be a net negative. You would essentially become someone else's pawn or tool. So ultimately, what determines our existential direction is what determines all of the other areas of our life. Every area of our life, the area of knowing, of scientific understanding, the area of power, of technology, the area of commerce, of exchange, the area of money, of energy flows into and out of our body and our house and our experience. All of the other areas of life, including what we even call religion, is determined by the existential level. And the Becoming Human project is about recognizing that human beings no longer have time to pretend that their failure to understand their own existence isn't destroying them. We no longer have time to pretend that our failure to understand our own existence is destroying us. Human beings are clearly one species, but we do not behave as if we have a single shared interest. We know this is irrational. The great Immanuel Kant, German philosopher, in his book Perpetual Peace, he describes this very powerfully, and he imagines a growth of what we would call liberal institutions that would lead to a world in which there is a global community of peace. And this is the idea of many of our global institutions, but we need a global vision of peace and education. So all education in the world that we live in today has to be based on a global vision of the human species. A global vision of the human species takes into account all of our differences and does not disregard them. It does not say every religion is the same. It does not say every culture is the same. It does not say every scientific theory is the same. It says things are different and we need to understand their differences in order to decide what's good and valuable and how they relate to other things. We need to respect our differences. We also need to understand them. Understanding our differences is about existential education. Understanding there's different ways of living a human life than your own way is an existential insight. That gives wisdom. You can only get that through actually being in foreign cultures, reading and studying about foreign cultures. You have to learn to feel strange to yourself. When you start to feel strange to yourself because you see there's so many different ways of being human, you're starting to feel your own existence. And when you start to feel your own existence, you realize I've never had a conscious relationship to this. Like there's a sense in which I could become anything. So why am I what I am now? So an existential strategy is therefore, first of all, a response to fate. Insofar as you don't have an existential strategy, you are determined by fate. Fate is everything you have not chosen that is affecting your life. Fate is everything that you have not chosen that is affecting your life. So people say, are we determined by fate? That's up to you. Insofar as you don't shape your own life, yes, your life is absolutely determined by fate by definition. Fate being everything that influences you that you haven't chosen. So everything that shapes you either without your awareness or with your awareness. That's the first step of choice is do you choose to become aware of how you have been shaped? And this is the choice to confront your fate. So first of all, existential philosophy, the Becoming Human project is based on the fact that we have a fate. We have to freely confront our fate, and then we need to change our fate. And we need to move into a world that's not determined by fate. So existential strategy is a strategy, first of all, to respond to fate, to overcome fate, and then to create from fate the space of our own unique freedom. Everything that I do is designed to help people come to a deeper understanding of their own existence. And that means a huge part of what I do is classical university style higher education, where I read a lot of books, I teach about them, because these are very important products of the human race's wisdom and attempt to come to a clear understanding of itself. But if we read books and we try to understand things and we try to listen to things just for the sake of getting stuff into our mind, we won't use it properly. So the existential dimension of even scientific or scholarly or university knowledge is, how do you use this? All knowledge has a higher purpose. There's a basic development of knowledge, which is you go from ignoring things to learning about things, from learning about things to understanding things, from understanding things to knowing things, from knowing things to a deeper understanding of things. This is what I consider, right, the higher understanding. So you've got the lower understanding, you begin to understand a subject, it clicks, you then, oh, I know it now, I can do this formula, I can explain what this character is doing in the story. And the more you meditate on that knowledge, you get a deeper understanding. So this is the higher understanding that comes from knowledge and builds on knowledge. And then the evolution of understanding is practice or existential action. So the pragmatic dimension of all knowledge is the existential dimension, and that is the level of where the knowledge becomes an event in the world. So relative to ourselves, we're free agents. Relative to other people, we are something that's happening. And so ultimately, in order to conquer fate, we have to actually pursue freedom with our entire existence. And in order to pursue freedom from fate, we need to use all the resources we have, which means we need to be knowledgeable. So I believe the purpose that, for the reason humans have science, is to free ourselves from fate. So the purpose of science is to free ourselves from fate. The purpose of freeing ourselves from fate is to create a new space of freedom. The purpose of creating a new space of freedom is to bring a higher and deeper form of reality into existence in our own being, as our own being. In other words, it's to evolve existentially. We're talking here about existential evolution. So the Becoming Human Project is about giving a vision and strategy for the existential evolution of the human species. The Becoming Human Project is about giving an existential vision and strategy for the existential evolution of the human species, which means we need all of the science, we need all of the cultural wisdom, the religious, spiritual traditions, and we need to take them all very seriously. We can't ignore some or others without good scientific reasons. The basic idea of science is related to philosophy. Science is a practice that literally is embedded historically in philosophy. And so philosophical practice is the practice of learning the reasons for the things that you believe. So if you don't have reasons for things, you don't have a philosophical relationship to them. If you're not trying to understand things, you don't have a philosophical or scientific relationship to them. And so one of the ways in which my existential approach is built on what we think of as existentialism, but very different, is existentialism can sometimes seem like it's not focused on science or it gives science short shrift. But in point of fact, my approach is that in order to pursue the question of existence, you have to marshal all of the existing resources of scientific understanding that we have, of religious and spiritual insight, of political skill, of entrepreneurial access, wisdom to innovation. And this creates the existential novum. That's the Latin word for new. A new thing, a novum. And so the existential novum is what we're looking for. We're looking for a new way of existing, right? In Latin, that's the ens novum. That's the new existing, the new way of being. So the idea of becoming new is the idea of realizing your existence. We want a new human existence, a human existence in which we have understood why there's evil in the human species and we have overcome it. So therefore, the existential strategy and the existential vision I lay out is a development, and you could say, of Nietzsche's idea of the more than human, of the superhuman, of that which lies beyond the human. And what lies beyond the human is the true human, the idea of the human that is worthy of living forever, that is good for the cosmos, that's good for all the planets that it might visit, that's good for the stars, that's good for animal life, that's good for the earth. So we're looking for a vision of ourselves that can guide the evolution of us at every level, materially, scientifically, biologically. Who's going to answer the question, what should be done to your body if it could live another 100 years? But what if that 100 years turns into 1,000 years, and that 1,000 years turns into 1,000,000 years until eventually someone says, hey, look, I can give you a pill and you won't naturally physically die. Maybe if someone hurts you, you'll die. But if you just are left to your own devices, you'll just keep going. If we pursue that pill of immortality out of fear, we will create more and more of the hell that humans have already had. But if we consider the question, oh, we're being given the literal question of every great myth. If you could attain the power of the gods, what would you do with it? What you would do with the power of the gods, the power of the Athanatoi in Greek and Homer, the deathless ones, the ones who are free from death, what would you do with it? This is the question that ultimately determines, are you worthy of this? That's how the great stories are the ultimate answer to the question, what is the meaning of what we know? In order to interpret what we know, we have to understand the stories that we're telling ourselves about what we know. We have to tell ourselves, what is the story we tell ourselves about science? We have stories about science and we have stories about religion, and these are not true stories. All of the best scholarship shows the stories we've told about science and religion are not true stories. And therefore, the foundation for a new vision of the human species is a rigorously scientifically, historically, spiritually, scholarly informed vision of how humans have gotten to where we've gotten, how we've gotten to this crisis and opportunity to literally evolve a new form of ourselves. And yet we don't have the intellectual and spiritual maturity to deal with this question. That's what AI ethics is about. AI ethics is about evolving a strategy for the wise evolution of the human species. That's how I see it. And so therefore, as I've said in many contexts, I don't believe artificial intelligence is a useful term. And we're talking about natural human enhancement. We're talking about what humans are making. Everything in so-called AI systems is based on us. And therefore, the only way we'll have trustworthy AI is when humans are trustworthy. And how we get into the details of this is something, I share with clients and others, but that's the literal fact. And I would say there's no escaping that. So this is why the so-called alignment problem is unsolvable, and yet it must be solved. The alignment problem is unsolvable, and yet it must be solved. The alignment problem is fundamentally an existential, anthropological problem. It's a problem about humans themselves. And the alignment problem is not taken seriously when it's considered a problem of our technology. Everyone in the AI space who's wise is all saying a version generally of the same shared idea, which is, oh, the more we think about AI, it's not artificial, it's human. We're talking about ourselves. And well, that's what the history of philosophy and religion is about. It's about the deepest quest for the human beings to understand themselves in their natural environment, to understand agency, to understand how our freedom fits in with the freedom of other beings. So the question, do you have an existential strategy, is also the question, do you have a way of understanding how are you going to use AI in your life? How are you going to use AI in your business? How are you going to vote if we have a chance to vote on what we should do with abilities to enhance life? Who should have their life enhanced? Under what conditions? Should we punish people by not enhancing their life? Is immortality something that we should let some people have and not others? Or is it worth stopping them from having immortality? Right? These are literal questions that you might say come sheer out of a philosopher's head, and yet they're the most pressing political questions. So an existential strategy involves having an existential politics, not about your territory, which is important, but it's downstream of the territory of your own being. You have to have a strategy of thinking, hey, I have a territory. It's called my own existence. I'm responsible for it. I can use it to make myself better, to get all the good things I want, or I can use it to act like I don't exist and to just coast. Well, when you coast, you become part of other people's systems. So the Becoming Human project is for one specific type of person, which is the human being who wants to become more human. The Becoming Human project is therefore about human augmentation through spiritual technology. The Becoming Human project is about human augmentation through spiritual technology. And the spiritual technologies that we use are science, technology itself as we think about it, external physical systems, but much deeper, the modes of thinking that created and properly used those technologies. So the ultimate tool, the ultimate technology is the capacity to spiritually transform yourself. The ultimate science is the science that leads to the capacity to realize the life that you want and to bring a higher form of your own existence and the existence that you share with others into being. And this is what only an existential strategy can give you. So if you're interested in having an existential strategy, then what you need is an education in a way that our education systems haven't provided. We haven't evolved yet to that. So my idea is not let's replace all of the great things we have already going on. Not at all. We have to figure out how to use all that and bring it to more people. And there's many great technology and educational companies that are doing that. That's not what I'm doing. I'm thinking about this from the standpoint of assume that you're immortal. Okay. If we're immortal right now, that's a disaster because we're very evil. We're hurting each other as a species. So, in order to actually make the world a good place, we have to find ways to change ourselves. And therefore, the literal most important knowledge is the knowledge of how to transform yourself. And that can only be known through understanding how to develop your freedom, not through coercion, because we are free. We can freely choose to ignore our freedom and pretend that we're determined. Those are the people who advocate on behalf of the machine ethic. The machine ethic says you're a program, you're a cog, you're not an agent. That's the machine ethic. So the Becoming Human project is a rejection of the machine ethic. And it says machines serve humans. Humans are the authors of machines. Machines are stories that humans tell themselves to realize their power. Machines are stories human tells themselves to realize their power. So you could say, well, a machine is a real thing, right? But it's worthless unless you have a need for it. It's very easy to imagine a race of beings that evolves a physics 1,000 times more advanced than ours is, that doesn't need any electrical based outlets or currencies because, say, they figured out a way to access energy, what people might call 0 point energy. So, guess what? Most of the technological physical infrastructure of the modern post industrial world would disappear overnight. And many people who have a vested interest in those things would be afraid of that. Think about this then. Do you want a doctor who would be unhappy if you got better? Is it a person who's a real healer would be happy if they no longer had work to do as a healer? They would be happy. A person who's a real advocate of progress would be happy if they no longer needed all of the sort of machines that we currently have. So the idea of spiritual machines is not uploading what's obviously the source of the machine into the thing that it made. Say a machine is a type of book that humans write. Everything that humans do is a form of writing or speech. We write out a story of ourselves. I want a way to get somewhere faster. So let's come up with ideas around that. When you realize those ideas as a new technology, you've created a new transportation or communication technology. So our technologies are modes of our self-transformation. And if we don't transform ourselves for the good, we make ourselves less free. And the nature of human existence is that it's dynamic and there's a lot of forces pressing in on us. We're like at sea, being struck by many different currents of energy. And so a strategy is a goal and a path to get to your goal. So to have an existential strategy, you need an existential vision for your life. And that's what my work is designed to provide. It's designed to therefore provide what I consider real philosophical education, which was a way of living that integrated our pursuit of our deepest spiritual values with the most powerful, rigorous uses of whatever the tools of knowledge, technology, capitalism, commerce, socialism, whatever is available as social technology, epistemic technologies, technologies of knowing, bureaucracy is an epistemic technology, right? Existential insight or wisdom is what allows you to use every other technology for your own good. So if you don't have the spiritual technology of existential insight in the path of creating it, every other technology that you develop will destroy you. If you develop knowledge without the wisdom to use knowledge, the more knowledge you have, the more bad it will be for you. If you develop power without the ability to use power well, the more power you have, the more dangerous and destructive it will be for you. So even though power and knowledge, as I've stressed, are good things, they have to serve our existence. They have to serve our freedom. They have to serve the freedom and existence of our fellow existing free beings. And so, therefore, we have to start off, I believe, with a completely new vision of the human being that says we can't start over. That was the disastrous path of all totalitarianism. They said, let's create a new human and let's ignore or reject supposedly all of the traditions we have, the religious traditions. Let's make a new science. No, we need to respect the traditions of science that we have. We need to respect the traditions of existential insight that we have, that we call religions or spiritual paths or cultures, and we need to study them. And so I work with people who are experts in the scientific tradition of learning, who are experts in spiritual traditions of learning, philosophers, scholars of religion, actual practitioners and sages. And I'm always talking to these people. I'm doing projects with these people. I'm helping try to serve their work where it overlaps with mine and I can be of use. I'm trying to collaborate and work with these people. And therefore, all of the different technologies of the so-called post-industrial globalized world, the technologies of venture capital, of so-called social engineering, of very large-scale bureaucratic planning, all of these are technologies that must be recognized as having a spiritual or existential dimension, which is how they shape the human being at the level of its own essence, the species essence of us as an individual, which therefore affects all of us. This is deeply connected to Feuerbach and his atheism. That's another story. But this isn't atheistic or religious in a conventional sense. It's sometimes what I call religious atheism or kind of, spiritual atheism, or you could think of it as a kind of different vision of what the gods are. The gods have to do with like humans coming to terms with their freedom. So I have a basic way to start this path, which is if you really want to understand how the world became the way it became at a high level based on the best scholarship and understanding, which is my unique contribution to scholarship based on my work at Yale, which I'm also writing a different academic book about. But I gave this first to the world for the ear because we're entering a new oral age, as I've discussed. And the future of literacy is the integration of the ear and the eye. That's the future of literacy, the integration of the ear and the eye. But literacy is ultimately about learning to listen well and learning to speak well. And through learning to listen well and speak well, we write the world around us into existence, right? Writing is ultimately about creating the effects that you want to create and about discovering yourself through language. So writing is the highest form of spiritual technology. And everything that we have now is based on the fact that mathematical symbols can be converted out of human semantic symbols that we call natural language. That's what LLMs, for example, are, is the mathematical translation of what human beings have said in language. So ultimately, AI is the natural extension of humans' linguistic powers, human symbolic powers. And therefore, existential responsibility at the level of technology, at the level of artificial intelligence and AI ethics is the core level of responsibility that we need. And that requires meta science. It requires the core skill of ongoing expert synthesis, as I've discussed in many videos, which I've linked below. So the meta scientific approach is where you look at everything that we can know as best as you can, and you actively work to bring it together so that you're ever more aligned with the best knowledge we have, but for a purpose, which is you want to understand things to make yourself better. You want to understand things to know the world in a more faithful way. You want to understand nature so that you can treat nature in a more just way. So the Becoming Human Project is therefore about honoring our own existence and freedom through realizing it. And we realize our existence and freedom through a new way of recognizing education at the deepest level is about becoming yourself. It's not about school or about degrees. Those things are useful for some people or not useful for other people. Every person needs to learn to have existential insight. And the more existential insight that we have, the more power we have to change our fate. Because as I said, we do have fate. All of us have fate. And people who deny that there's fate maybe they mean something different, but they're denying something very clear about us. The human being, human existence is the synthesis potentially of fate and freedom. And when you bring freedom together with fate, you create the ingredients of yourself. That's what I consider existential calling or vocation, which is the synthesis of freedom and fate. The synthesis of freedom and fate is your unique calling, your specific body, your specific gifts, your specific experience, your specific knowledge, your specific ignorance, your parents, your history. That's part of your fate. And so, in order to come to terms with yourself as a power and yourself as a source of insight to grow, you have to have a vision of yourself. And I think that vision starts with thinking, I have dignity as an existing being. I have the power to shape my own life in harmony with the good of other people. And in order to do that, I have to seek what is good for me in a way that eventually helps me serve the good of others. But I can't serve the good of others if I don't serve the good of myself. If I don't know what's good for me and do that, how can I do what's good for another person? So, in order to love our neighbor as ourselves, we have to love ourselves the way we would wish to love our neighbor, or the way we would wish to be loved. And ultimately, that form of self love is existential passion, the passion to actually invest in yourself. And if you want to invest in yourself and understand the core deep picture, then you're interested in the story that I've told. That's in Becoming Human Origins. If you're interested in that, you can listen to the first 2 hour long episodes for free. And then you can buy the entire thing. You can join and become a member. You get that at the $100 level. You can also join at the $10 level for an annual membership, and you can get Origins. If you can't afford it, just simply say, I'm applying for a scholarship to get a copy of Origins and give a brief reason why. And the people who buy Origins at the $1,000 level for $100 a month, that think about that. A community college course might cost that much. A university course costs a lot more than that. This one course, the Becoming Human Origins course, will literally teach you the past 300 years of relevant scholarship, the history of science and religion, all the way back to Socrates, Plato, and the birth of science, the birth of Christianity, and what we call Judaism. And it'll show how that's led to this very place. So if you're interested in the deep details and the big story, then you're interested in Origins. And I would really encourage you to check that out for yourself. But you might think, I don't know if I want all that deep story. Well, then you can just start with practicing a new way of thinking about your existence. And in order to do that, what you want to know is, well, what does it mean to be alive? Like, what is life? What is life is the question of what is the soul? So to care for your own existence, we want to have a sense of what is life. I'm involved in a project called the New Biology Project based on helping researchers think about what are the frontiers of the evolution of what we know about living organisms. And that's related to existential philosophy as I see it, because we can learn a lot from the biology of ourselves to understand what life is at an existential level. It's going to look like life at every other level. It's going to look like organization. It's going to look like the free use of resources to creatively and spontaneously adapt to our environments to achieve our goals for the benefit of the whole system. So that's a kind of existential strategy. And we see that organisms have that. So at that level, you want to know what is life. But to know what life is, you also need to know what is the context of life. Life exists not by itself. Organisms exist amongst many other organisms. We exist in what we call the world or the universe. And the ancient term for that in Greek is the cosmos. And this is the beautiful ordered framework in which our life takes place. And so what is the cosmos? What is the universe? That's sometimes called cosmology in modern science or in philosophy. So you want to know, what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to live in the world? What is the world? What is the framework of your life? And then you want to know, okay, what are the gods? You might not think, I don't believe in gods. I'm a rational secular atheist. Sure, if you're a rational person, you would definitely want to know why most of the human species has believed in gods. No rational person ignores the history of their species. No rational person ignores the history of their species. No rational person ignores what many wise members of their species have thought was important. So whether you personally believe in religions or gods or not, if you're a human being, you have to learn from the idea of gods as ultimate values. So I approach gods in a way that isn't about whether you believe in gods. It's about, what does the idea of gods teach you about how to relate to your ultimate values? And so, therefore, that's what the ancient scientists and philosophers called theology, the doctrine of gods or our highest human values, if you want to think of it that way. And so, that is very important. And that gives you a basic framework to then interpret your life. And if you're interested then in those ideas, that you can get the course that I have on the soul, the worlds, and the gods for $25. And if you join as a member and you get the course, which you can then pay $10 for the month and get the whole course to start off with, then you get access to a unique set of tools, which include meditation techniques and study and discussion questions after every one of those episodes that help you practice the knowledge that I give, the ideas I share about, well, what is the soul? What is life? What is the world? What is the universe? And then what are the gods, or what are our ultimate values? And if you're interested in not just hearing about ideas, if you're interested in philosophy and learning, what do philosophers think? What does this philosopher think about this stuff? You're going to get that in the course, but members get access to the existential strategic dimension. How do you use this knowledge to actually shape your life, to potentially shape your business? So every episode has a corresponding meditation technique that you can practice. It has a corresponding discussion questions or study guides. And if you're interested, you can say, I'm interested in joining a community of people who at some point would want to discuss these ideas. And as the community is growing, we're putting those people together, or you can learn more. So that's the soul, the world, and the gods. That's a very great place to start. I have other material I'm happy to talk about sometime, but these are just examples of ways that from my standpoint, I could help you shape an existential strategy. You might already have people who are helping you do that, in which case, good luck with that. And I'm glad that you found these resources. Maybe mine could be a supplement to those as well. I always recommend many resources to people. Find what works for you. But I encourage you, be able to say, I have an existential strategy. How do you get an existential strategy? You need a vision of what existence is, and you need a vision of your own existence. What is the Becoming Human Project about? It's about realizing a vision of the human species, a new vision of human existence. It's about the existential evolution of the species so that we can responsibly be an immortal and star-faring species. So I believe that the destiny of the human being is to be an immortal, star-faring species. We're not ready for that yet. And so the goal of the Becoming Human Project is let's get ourselves ready to become an immortal, star-faring species. Let's become a species that's ready to interact. If we're not ready to be immortal, let's imagine that there are immortal beings. Let's be responsible to learn how to learn from them, to interact with them. So becoming responsible for immortality, becoming responsible for having the power to end the world. These are the questions that so-called AI ethics or the ethics of AGI raise. And I think ultimately, while there's many great scholars out there in AI ethics, I'm constantly reading their work and learning from my colleagues. My approach is based on the fact that I think to ultimately resolve the questions around the development of artificial intelligence technology, we have to confront the deepest, most traditional human questions. And we have to recognize these are technologically, politically urgent questions. We need an existential vision. We need an existential strategy, and we need an existential politics. A politics that teaches us how to share existence in common, how to live for the benefit of each other, our own existence, and how to shape our own existence so that it serves the singular existence that we all are part of. And you don't have to believe in anything to realize, hey, we're all here. We all shape each other. Let's learn to do this responsibly. Maybe we're not the generation that's going to become immortal, but maybe we're the generation that's going to realize that humans can be or could be immortal. We're the generation to realize why we've always dreamed of the gods. If the gods don't exist, they must be something that's guiding us towards a future that maybe could exist. Maybe the idea of the gods is images of ourselves that we're seeking still to understand. And I would suggest to you the key to developing an existential vision is you want to learn from the wisdom of the past and from the science of the present. So to bring together the wisdom of the past and the science of the present is to have existential vision. It's to bring the ancient and the new and to see them flowing together like this incredibly powerful force guiding us into the future, into the new novum, the new event that is the human species. I welcome you to the Becoming Human Project. I thank you for your interest in this, and I hope that this is an inspiring part of your day today and that it can lead to greater wisdom and blessings for you. May you find the path that brings you all the good that you desire. Thank you. I'm Samuel Loncar. I'm the philosopher and founder of the Becoming Human Project, a project that is designed to bring philosophy as a way of life to everyone, from the most rigorous level of integrating high-level scientific research, working with consulting clients at the level of corporate strategy, things like AI ethics, the development of our species through speaking, all the way down to the level of education designed to reach every person on the globe with an affordable, accessible way to gain deeper insight into the great traditions of wisdom of the past, the great traditions of knowledge of the present, of science and of spirituality, and give them the access to tools where they can apply that for themselves. So that's what I'm seeking to give everyone, and that's what I'm seeking to live myself. So thank you for being part of the Becoming Human Project. Whether you join as a member or not, we all share existence. And so I know you're part of the project, and I wish you well on it.